Welcome back to the channel. This will be my team selection for Matchday 4 in UCL Fantasy. I already used the Limitless chip this season, and I've now got 2 free transfers heading into the upcoming deadline. There's still a small chance I can use the Wildcard chip, but I'm also open to taking a -4 hit or just using those 2 free transfers. I'll also review Matchday 3 and talk about how that went for me, and be sure to let me know how you did down in the comment section below and your transfer plans for Matchday 4. Smash the like button and subscribe if you're new if you enjoy my content. Our aim is to get this to the 200 likes on YouTube and to keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers and beyond. We're getting very close towards that milestone and we'll hit that by the end of the year. Thank you very much for all the likes, comments, subscriptions, super chats, and all the members and of course patrons. You're massively appreciated. Check all the links in the description below. My Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, the Discord server, UCL Fantasy League, Draft Hound, as well as Spotify. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Both goalkeepers I bought on the Limitless kept a clean sheet, whilst the 2 goalkeepers I had in my normal team didn't even play, of course, with Di Gregorio suspended and Blazwich was benched for Schlager at Red Bull Salzburg. But David Raya kept the clean sheet against Shakhtar Donetsk in a 1-0 victory. Arsenal were fantastic in the first half, creating a lot of chances and playing some good football, but in the second, they were really flat, and Shakhtar had some good openings and passages of play, and they could have ended up equalising. And I think Arsenal have really struggled since that point in the Premier League. They've lost to Bournemouth and Newcastle deservedly. I think they were poor in both matches, and against Liverpool, they drew 2-2 at home, and their title hopes are really faltering in that competition. But in the Champions League, that's 3 clean sheets out of 3, and they kept another one against Preston North End, although David Raya didn't start that particular match. He's had some shaky moments recently after a fantastic start to the season, but ultimately, I still think he offers quite a lot of value in UCL Fantasy. One of my main differentials on the Limitless was Akanji, who got 10 points. He got an assist, ball recoveries, and also the clean sheet in a 5-0 win for Manchester City. He's always very underrated in this fantasy format, and I think Gvardiol, when he starts, has more goal threat and he can get ball recoveries, so most people will gravitate towards him naturally. But I had a feeling Gvardiol could be benched in that game, and I talked about this in the deadline stream, and that's why I went for Akanji in the end, and I'm very happy that I did so. One of my best picks with this chip, not just in terms of the points he got, but also the effective ownership due to how many people have actually gone for him, which I have to say is a very small amount. The ownership figure is very decent and promising, and it's always nice to see a differential produce the goods for you. My second defender was Gabriel, so I doubled up on the Arsenal defence, and them keeping a clean sheet was paramount to the success of my Limitless chip. I ended up gaining points on my non-Limitless team, but not by much actually. Despite some really tough fixtures for a lot of my players, many of them actually came up trumps and scored goals away to Real Madrid and also to Barcelona, and everyone ticked along nicely, but I still gained a decent amount of points using this chip, and I think that double up in the Arsenal defence was really helpful. But my final defender was slightly disappointing. Theo Hernandez got 5 points despite the fact that AC Milan conceded, but they were facing Club Brugge, who went down to 10 men after Milan took the lead. So for them to concede and ultimately be outplayed for large parts of that game was extremely disappointing. And not to mention, I had Hakimi for a lot of the week actually heading into Matchday 3, but I ended up selling him because PSV was a tough fixture on paper. They scored, so PSG's clean sheet was wiped out, but Hakimi scored a great goal from outside the box and won player of the match to deliver 13 overall. The returns only continued, and Phil Foden won player of the match in that 5-0 win against Sparta Prague, but I have to say, Matheus Nunes should have won that award. He was the best player on the pitch. Now, if Erling Haaland had stayed and wasn't subbed out early, he would have scored the penalty, most likely anyway, and secured the hat-trick, so maybe he would have won it, but I don't think Phil Foden deserved to win that, despite playing quite well overall. But he got 11 points. I'm very happy with that performance. He scored another goal in the Champions League, but he's yet to score in the Premier League this season or across any other competition, so it seems like he's saving the best for UCL Fantasy at this moment in time. My second midfielder was Florian Wirtz, once again delivering the goods in this competition with 11 points. He has been the best midfielder so far this season, although there are some strong contenders, as I'll get onto very soon, with my non-Limitless team, of course, heading into Matchday 4. But Florian Wirtz is definitely one to keep, despite Bayer Leverkusen having some tough fixtures like Inter Milan, and up next is Liverpool at Anfield, which is going to be very tough, but the likes of Florian Wirtz can still come out with a goal contribution in that game. My next midfielder, though, was Mohamed Salah, who delivered 7 points away from home against RB Leipzig. He got an assist and not much more than that, but he also got a ball recovery point, which was quite surprising, and Salah has been extraordinary in the Premier League this season, and I think he can deliver the goods in UCL Fantasy as well, and probably contend for the Golden Boot, especially if Liverpool can go far in this competition. Now, there are some disappointments in the midfield for me, but Pulisic was not one of them. In fact, he was my first day captain on the Tuesday, and he got 8 points. So I had a decision to make. Do I keep Pulisic as my captain or switch to the likes of Erling Haaland on the Wednesday? And I'll show you very soon what I ended up doing. But finally, the only blank in my starting 11 was Lookman against Celtic, a 0-0 draw. I don't think anybody expected that. And since that game, Celtic have kept 4 clean sheets in a row across all competitions. And over the weekend, Lookman scored a brace against Napoli, who are top of Serie A, and Atalanta now third in that table. These two forwards were in my non-limitless team. Erling Haaland got a brace and a double-digit haul against Sparta Prague, and if he had stayed on the pitch, it would have likely been a hat-trick if he had converted that penalty, which I'm almost certain he would have done. So a bit disappointing there, especially for those that would have captained Erling Haaland on the Wednesday, but still a very healthy return, and we're looking at maybe the best version of Haaland in the Champions League now, with a goal in Matchday 2 and also a brace in the recent game. But in the Premier League, he's really struggled with 4 blanks out of the last 5 games after an impeccable start, scoring hat-trick after hat-trick, followed up by a brace. He was absolutely extraordinary between game weeks 1 to 5 in the Premier League, but he's really faltered ever since, and Manchester City lost over the weekend to Bournemouth by a 2-1 scoreline, and Haaland produced a shocking miss in that game. He's been missing multiple big chances in the last couple of game weeks there. But my final forward was Gyökeres. This was a late change, by the way, because I was looking at Vlahovic instead. He ended up blanking, so I'm very happy I ended up going for Gyökeres again. He scored, won another Player of the Match award, and I think that's the best thing about him. He can get that goal, and he's got a great chance of winning that award to get 9 points overall. He's done it on 2 occasions already in match days 1 and 3. The problem with Gyökeres is that the next 2 games are really tough against Manchester City and Arsenal. The kind of saving grace is the fact they're home matches, and Sporting will still have Ruben Amorim for the Manchester City game, but we don't know what's in store for them after the international break. Once he departs, will it be the under-21 manager filling in? And they are linked with Sergio Conceição, who was the Porto manager last season, and I still think they can deliver a result against Arsenal, especially based on current form, and Gyökeres is one of the most informed strikers in Europe. In the end, I took a risk with the captaincy and switched from Pulisic to Haaland. I gained a few points in the process to get 98 for the entire match day, so my rank rose to 38,000 from around 100k, a very decent rise, and I gained around 12 points on the limitless chip. Just for reference, last season, I actually lost out on points when I played the limitless chip compared to what I would have scored if I didn't play that booster. So in the end, it's a very good showing. Just a bit disappointed with Lookman, and some of the players on my bench, like Watkins and Luka Dean, were benched. That did kind of play into my hands a little bit with my substitutions. I brought in Akanji, and Frimpong was benched as well, by the way, and I still managed to get a very high score, so I'm very thankful for that. But at the same time, I had Hakimi and Emi Martinez in goal, so it would have resulted in even more points being scored if I'd kept those players. But ultimately, it's still a very strong showing, almost 100 points. I'll take it and move on. At least it wasn't a complete waste of the limitless chip. We're now back to reality with a non-limitless team, and I've got some big issues in my squad, mainly in goal. And this is a position that I always tell people, try not to make too many transfers, but I might be in a situation where both of my goalkeepers, Blažević and Di Gregorio, will not play at all. So I'm very concerned, and I might need to make a transfer in this position. But Di Gregorio plays on the 5th of November on the Tuesday, and my hope is that he plays for Juventus away from home against Lille. And afterwards, we've got some very tough games for Juventus, facing the likes of Manchester City very soon. But my concern is that Perin will be the designated Champions League goalkeeper after winning Player of the Match in Matchday 3. And he also made a terrific penalty stop and made so many saves to keep Juventus in that game, despite being down to 10 men against Stuttgart. They ended up losing the game, but Perin was fantastic throughout. In recent Serie A games, Di Gregorio was starting all of those matches, so my hopes is that that continues and he starts once again in the Champions League. I have some quality players in my defensive line, but Trent Alexander-Arnold kind of epitomizes this because he faces Bayer Leverkusen in Matchday 4, and that's followed up by Real Madrid in Matchday 5. The saving grace here would be 2 home games, Liverpool can get the victories, and maybe 1 clean sheet, but I think that's very unlikely. So with Trent, you're probably hoping for ball recoveries and attacking returns, and he's been very unfortunate in that department. He's creating some big chances for his teammates, particularly in the Premier League, but they aren't converting those opportunities, and we end up seeing Trent getting the pass before the assist, which is very frustrating for such an expensive defender in both UCL Fantasy and FPL. My second option would be Saliba away from home against Inter Milan. Now, this could be a low-scoring game. I think that will be the case, and Arsenal could keep another clean sheet in the Champions League, but I'm not very optimistic based on recent form. In fact, I think Inter Milan have the edge and they'll probably win 1-0 or 2-0, but who knows? Football is full of surprises and momentum can change very quickly. Martin Odegaard could be back in the Arsenal squad for this match, and if not, he'll be available very soon, either for Game Week 11 in FPL or after the international break. He'll start some games very soon for Arsenal and make a massive impact on their creativity, giving them a massive chance to win games. But without Odegaard starting in this one, I just don't see Arsenal creating many opportunities, and the burden will be on Saka, who will likely be doubled or tripled up on. And I think Inter Milan will create chances because Arsenal have been very shaky defensively in recent games as well. And finally, another quality defender is Grimaldo, but he does face Liverpool away from home, so I've got a direct clash here between two of my defenders in the starting 11, but I still think all three of these defenders are viable options in the long term. One of my favourite budget midfielders in the game is Gittins, and the next two fixtures look fantastic for Borussia Dortmund. As mentioned in my recent UCL Fantasy podcast, they are decimated by injuries in all positions. The likes of Adeyemi, Kobel are all out, even Anton, who I had in Matchday 1. But I still think they have something to offer, especially in the attacking departments. Guirassy up front is a great choice, and Gittins is my favourite Borussia Dortmund midfielder, so I still like him a lot, and he hasn't blanked so far this season in UCL Fantasy. But when I bought him in Matchday 2, he was so disappointing for me because he only won a penalty in a 7-1 victory against Celtic, and when I took him out on the limitless chip in Matchday 3, he scored away from home against Real Madrid. But I still like him a lot, and I think he has a lot to offer in Matchdays 4 and 5. My next midfielder would be Yamal, and I think Barcelona are worth doubling or tripling up on against Red Star Belgrade. It's an away tie, and Red Star Belgrade have a fantastic home crowd. The atmosphere will be electric, but Barcelona's quality will be far too much for them, and Barcelona got another victory in La Liga. They've scored over 30 goals in that competition. They're playing some great football despite having a lot of injuries themselves throughout this season. Now, my preference in terms of the Barcelona midfield would be with Rafinha, and that's why I'm looking to buy him for Jude Bellingham in Matchday 4. Now, I think Bellingham will turn things around, and he might even play in his original position from last season, get into the box with those late runs, and his finishing ability is fantastic, so he could produce something against AC Milan, and I could end up regretting this transfer. But I prefer Barcelona's fixtures, especially over the next two match days, and Rafinha has been sensational since March, whilst Bellingham hasn't scored many goals. In fact, for Real Madrid, he hasn't scored this season, which is a complete shock to the system. I think he'll get back to form very soon, but I think Rafinha is the better option at this moment in time. And finally, to complete this midfield, I'm looking to go for Florian Wirtz away from home against Liverpool, so that's a Bayer Leverkusen double up. I've also got Trent in this setup, and a decent bench, by the way, so it's not all doom and gloom, but I don't like having these clashes directly because most likely you'll have a blank guaranteed with this sort of aspect happening. But at the same time, Trent can get an attack in return, and so could Florian Wirtz. I think both of them can return at the same time, but for these two and Grimaldo to all produce something, that's very unlikely. The good thing about UCL Fantasy, though, is that defenders can get ball recovery points very easily, as Grimaldo showed in Matchday 3 with a 4-pointer, despite Bayer Leverkusen conceding to Brest. My second proposed transfer for Matchday 4 would be Gyökeres out for Guirassy, and that's mainly looking at the fixtures, with Sporting hosting Manchester City and Arsenal over the next two match days, whilst Borussia Dortmund face Sturm Graz at home and then Dynamo Zagreb away. Those are fantastic fixtures where I could see Gittins and Guirassy causing havoc and scoring plenty of goals and getting those assists, and that's why I love this Borussia Dortmund attacking double up, especially in Matchday 4. But there are other forwards, of course, and Gyökeres is still worth holding on to, particularly from Matchday 6 and beyond, and he could easily score against Manchester City and Arsenal based on their recent form. But I think looking at the fixtures, this is a great transfer to make, and I could even take a -4 hit, as I'll show you very soon, with my substitutes. My second forward, though, would be Erling Haaland, and the big positive is that Kevin De Bruyne is now back. That's only going to mean more chances for Erling Haaland. Their combination is fantastic, one of the best you'll see throughout Europe. Unfortunately, though, Kevin De Bruyne is injury prone, so how long will he be available for? We just don't know for sure. and he was an unused substitute against Bournemouth, but I think he'll get some minutes here against Sporting, which isn't an easy game for either Sporting themselves or Manchester City, as the Portuguese outfit have won all 10 of their games so far in the Portuguese league. Now, the only downside for them is that their manager, Ruben Amorim, will leave for Manchester United over the international break. And my final forward will be a certain Harry Kane, who was my best option this season in terms of the captaincy back in Matchday 1, delivering 21 points with a 4-goal haul against Dynamo Zagreb. He scored once again against Barcelona in their 4-1 defeat away from home, and Harry Kane's consistency is remarkable. He scored another brace this weekend in a 3-0 victory for Bayern Munich, and they responded very strongly since their last Champions League loss against Barcelona. They won 3-0, 4-0 and 5-0 in recent matches. Kane is scoring a lot of goals, getting many opportunities, and I could see him continuing this trend against Shakhtar Donetsk, Paris Saint-Germain and Benfica, his next 3 opponents in the Champions League. It's extremely rare for me to take a -4 here in UCL Fantasy, but I'm considering it this week because I could be down to 10 men if Blažević and Di Gregorio don't play for their respective clubs, and I think it's a foregone conclusion with the RB Salzburg goalkeeper, but with Di Gregorio there's still a chance that he starts over Perin, and that's why I could hold out hope and not take the -4 hit for Emi Martinez. And looking at the predicted lineups and also as much information as possible on Juventus could be crucial. If I know for sure that Di Gregorio will start against Lille, I won't take a -4 hit and instead focus on the outfield positions, buying the likes of Rafinha and Guirassy in my setup. I could even keep Bellingham, to be quite honest with you. That's not a necessary transfer despite the lack of form he's showing, because I still believe in the quality of player and that Bellingham will bounce back this season. The rest of my bench includes Kubarsi facing Red Star Belgrade away. I think that's a decent fixture, and Kubarsi can get clean sheets from time to time. I've also got Kimmich and Kim Min-jae facing Benfica at home, and I think the South Korean defender can offer a lot of value because of ball recoveries. He already has 17 this season in the Champions League, and he was one of the best defenders last season, especially in the group stages, although he did falter in the knockout stages. But let's now talk about the captaincy. I've got some big decisions to make on the Tuesday and Wednesday, and my current thinking is to go for Guirassy on the 5th of November facing Sturm Graz at home, but Gittins and Erling Haaland are definitely viable alternatives, and on the Wednesday, Rafinha, Yamal and Harry Kane are the best options I have, and I'd lean towards Harry Kane because of his sheer consistency, and he's got the high ceiling. He could easily get a brace or a hat-trick against Benfica, but this isn't locked in. The same goes for my transfers as mentioned earlier, and even the captaincy on the Tuesday. This is all up in the air, and I'll finalise my squad during the deadline stream on Tuesday, so be sure not to miss it by hitting the notification bell on my channel and also subscribing in the process. Let's now discuss some possible different transfers I could make using the UCL Fantasy website, and maybe you'll prefer what I'm going to show you next compared to this 15-man squad I've been talking about throughout the podcast. It's difficult to ignore players who are in sensational form, and that's why Mohamed Salah could be one of my transfers in this week alongside Lookman and Carnesecchi, but maybe that goalkeeper transfer for a -4 hit won't be necessary if the Juventus shotstopper Di Gregorio is reportedly going to start in Matchday 4. So I could actually buy Lookman and Salah for free, and the only players I'd have to sell will be Florian Wirtz and Jude Bellingham. So if you do like these transfers, I'd be very interested to see your thoughts. I'd have 0.5 million left over, but that's assuming I buy a 4.5 million goalkeeper like Carnesecchi, or maybe I'll go for Kasper Schmeichel at 4.4 million. But if in the end Di Gregorio plays and I keep Blažević and don't take the -4 hit, I'd have 0.6 million left in the bank, and the alternatives would be Rafinha and Martinez for free, and that's it. Keeping Gyökeres in the process and kind of sticking with him at least against Manchester City in Matchday 4, and not buying Guirassy this week. But I have to say, if we're comparing the ceilings of both players and the fixtures, I do think Guirassy has a far higher ceiling than Gyökeres in Matchdays 4 and 5, and that's why I'm very tempted to make that transfer regardless. But I do like buying one of Rafinha, Salah or Lookman in the midfield. I do like Atalanta's next 2 fixtures, so buying 1 or 2 of their players, it could be Kolasinac or Sapakos in defence, or maybe Carnesecchi in goal, and then Lookman in the midfield. They're all possibilities for me, and I'm keeping an open mind heading into the deadline, and I'll be keeping an eye out for all the injury updates and also the suspensions and stuff like that, just so you have the full picture heading into Matchday 4, and you know exactly what to do with your transfers, wildcards or limitless teams in match day 4. So if we kind of look at this, I have 1.4 million left in the bank and very good opponents for the vast majority of my players. I think Gyökeres would be an exception to that rule, but considering Sporting's form and also Gyökeres' goal scoring throughout the entire season, I wouldn't put it past him to score something against Manchester City because he's that quality player. And like I said, the alternatives would be this, buying Lookman and Salah for free, if not taking that -4 hit if I feel I'm going to be down to 10 men with my 2 goalkeepers who have been disastrous since match day 1. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. I aim to get this video to over 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks, the Discord server, UCL Fantasy League Draft Hound, as well as Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It would go a long way to support my channel. I wish you all the best of luck for match day 4 and the rest of the tournament. Keep your eyes peeled for my FPL and UCL Fantasy content, and I'll see you very soon.